Hello. So I have been brewing a concept in my mind recently. After I watched this very beautiful video called this what skills do our children need to succeed in the 21st century? And it was a TED talk by this educator and pediatrician named Dr. Laura A. Jana. And through the video, she just basically mentions that a lot of the skills that we need to succeed in this century, in the modern world, are skills that we acquire when we're younger, when we're children, and we learn to forget them, or we learn to repress them, or we lose them because there's a lack of application for these skills. And she mentioned a lot of these skills in, I think, 7 categories. She started off with me skills, which are basically skills that help us regulate and control ourselves. So skills such as self-awareness, self-control, impulse control, focus, attention. And obviously those skills are needed to be nurtured within children because they don't really have the self-control when they're younger. But then she also talked about we skills, which are relationship skills, and that comes with communication, collaboration, empathy, and perspective taking. So yeah, she talked about me skills, we skills, why skills, which this is what prompted my whole thought to begin with, was this very impactful quote that, and I'm gonna say verbatim what she said in the TED Talk, which, by the way, I recommend you to go and check it out and watch it in full and come up with your own thoughts about it. But she said, fueled by technology, the information age has now put so many answers right at our collective fingertips that it is no wonder that the ability to ask good questions has become much more valued than simply knowing the right answers. This quote struck me so hard because it's true. The age that we're in, we have access to information right at our fingertips all of the time. And I was talking to one of my friends a couple weeks ago, and I was telling her how social media and the way we learn about each other as humans, as people, it's all research based now. Like, if you think about it, we are so deeply ingrained into this age of information that even the way we make connections requires research on our part before we even attempt to make the connections. Think of it this way. I just started school again, and most of the people I meet in school and I communicate with and want to get in touch with me, the first question is, what is your Instagram? It's never, let's hang out. It's never, can I have your number? Well, sometimes it's, can I have your number? But the first question for everyone universally is, what is your Instagram? And why is that? Because Instagram has become kind of like our portfolios of who we are as people. And back then, when we didn't have social media, when we didn't have Instagram, the way we got to know people was in real time, you know, by asking questions, by hanging out, by communicating, by collaborating, by interacting, which are basic fundamentals to education and learning as human beings. We are social beings. These are the fundamentals of how we get to know the world around us. But with the age of information, it's completely transformed even the way we get to know each other. Because now, instead of hanging out and seeing how the first hangout goes and seeing what things we have to talk about and just kind of honoring the spontaneity that comes with being a human being and developing friendships and connections, we are very methodical in our thought process. And I would like to preface this by saying that I'm not a cynic. I'm not saying one era was better than the other. I'm just simply observing and sharing what I see. But anyways, going back, because of this age of information, our brains, we do not realize it, because people say that we're like the dumbest generation, blah, blah, blah. That is being cynical. We are not the dumbest generation. We are capable of being the smartest generation. Every generation is capable of being the smartest generation. It's just the ways we apply that potential that really grants us the success of intelligence. And like I was saying, because this is the age of reason, our way of thinking has become strictly methodical and strictly research-based, because that's what we're doing. When we go and look at someone's Instagram before we hang out, before we want to go on a date with them, we're trying to see and research if we have any common interests that we share, if we have some level of relatability with them. But these are things that come naturally through immersion in the world. Some of the courses I'm taking in school, I'm taking 2 education classes. One of my classes, it's basically just talking about the philosophers of the age and how they've affected education. And 2 of the philosophers that we've been learning about is John Dewey and Jean Piaget. I'm not quite sure how to pronounce her name, but they basically really emphasize knowledge application. And also Jean-Jacques Rousseau, he emphasized honoring nature. And that is exactly what I'm trying to get at here. So how can we balance our brains and the way they've come to shift in the way we function and the primary ways in which we think within our culture? How can we balance that with the nature that comes with being a human being, which is learning through experience, through being immersed in the world outside, not just reading up on things and doing your research before you try things, but actually putting yourself in the place to really utilize all the senses that we're gifted with. How do we establish this balance? Knowledge application. Knowledge application is the first way to reclaim learning in the age of information. It is in our nature to want to explore. We are curious beings. We are tactile beings. We are beings that have been blessed with the 5 senses, and these 5 senses are given to us so we can further nurture and support our brain, our understanding, our soul. So, the first step is honoring nature. And what do I mean by that? So like I was talking about with the relationships, one of the key things in human connection is spontaneity. You know, you never know who you're gonna meet, when you're gonna meet them, where you're gonna meet them, and what that meeting is gonna do for you. You know, that's the spontaneity that comes with it. You don't know if you're gonna stay friends with them forever, if you're gonna like them even the first time you guys hang out, if it's gonna go well. But that is a part of the learning process. Learning happens through experience. There's this quote that I think of, I can't think of the exact quote right now, but it's basically saying that learning happens through action. Like, you can't just sit down and you can journal about it to cope, but you can't sit down and journal and think of it hard in your head and try to problem solve until you solve the problem. There is some things in life that you just have to go in at it. Like you can't, obviously you're still going to be using your thinking skills once you're in the environment, once you've immersed yourself in that situation, but you can't overanalyze it beforehand or try to plan it and do everything so exactly methodically, because then that thing will lose its substance. It will lose its nature, its spontaneous nature that will learn to teach you through experience. And experience is so important in learning for us as human beings. So that is the first step to taking back our learning, is experience and action. The second way to take back our learning is through curiosity. Okay, so curiosity, like Dr. Laura A. Jana said, asking the right questions is better than knowing the right answers now, because everyone can know the right answers now with a Google search, with anything at all. But can everyone ask the right questions to get to those answers on their own? I have always been so, like, I love to journal. I love to journal so much. I've completed 5 journals just this year. They're basically my field notes of life. I literally write down everything I feel, everything I see, everything I think as I'm going through the motions of living. One of the practices that I take into consideration my journaling process, I'm always asking myself questions. Whenever I go somewhere and I have a question about something that happened while I was out there, I jot that question down and then I research it once I'm at home, you know? And that is kind of like I was talking about, creating that balance of learning to adapt and live to the modern age, but also honoring our nature of just being spontaneous and going out into the world and then doing further research based on our everyday. And also for my journals, one of the epiphanies I had recently while I was, because there's periods of times where I write a lot of my journals and there's periods of times where I go back to the journals I've written whenever I need counsel or whenever I feel lost. And I kind of try to grasp at things from every single journal and every single life experience to see how that can help me today. It's just times when I don't feel focused enough to do it on my own, and I have those notes to help me and perspectives to help me complete my own in the current situation I'm in. But one of the epiphanies I had recently was the fact that everything that I learn, like going back to my journals, I have journals, I'm 20 years old, I'm turning 21 this year. I have journals starting from when I was 14 years old, and a lot of the lessons in my journals that I end up learning are the same. They're basically the same simple fundamental concepts. It's like learning self-love, learning grace, learning understanding and respect for other people and forgiveness, learning to overcome failures. It's the same rudimentary basics that I've been learning ever since I was 14. And you're like, okay, bitch, then what is the point of you writing in your journal? You're just learning the same things. Well, that's because what I'm learning is not what matters. What matters is how I'm learning it. It's the fact that I'm even learning those things over and over again. The world is cyclical. We know this. Nature is cyclical. Things come to life, things flourish, things die, things come to life, things flourish, things die. It's just a constant cycle. And like I said, our learning is our nature. It's a part of human nature. So like everything natural in this world, learning is cyclical as well. I have literally gone through periods of my life where I went through extreme radical measures and had like beautiful lessons taught through me through those extreme radical measures. And I also went through periods in my life where I had those great same lessons taught through me in a simple interaction with a person, or a simple little meditation I had in the afternoon, and that thought just popped up in my brain and it occurred to me. But what makes me so enthusiastic about learning is the process of getting there. Like that is key number 3 to reclaiming learning in the information age. It's focusing and really pouring yourself into the process of learning rather than the knowledge itself or the arrival that you're gonna get at itself. Lately, I have been thinking a lot about the scientific process. And the scientific process, although a lot of people don't realize it, it's something that is so ingrained in the way we go about our everyday life. And this is in part because we are in the age of information and our brains are very much methodical and research-based. But like I was saying, the scientific process is very deeply ingrained into our lives. So for those of you who don't remember the scientific method, I'll just tell you, it's observation, questioning, hypothesis, experimentation, analysis, and conclusion. I don't know if that's like the exact verbatim things, but that's basically the meat of it. And if you think of it, there's the final step is conclusion. But scientists know that conclusions are never made. Conclusions are not finite. There is no end. There is no end to the gathering of knowledge. There isn't. When you come up with a conclusion, that just leads to you observing your conclusion and then asking more questions about the conclusion and building onto that conclusion and starting the scientific process over and over and over and over again. And with those repetitions or new cycles, I should say, because they're not repetitions, you might arrive at the same exact conclusion that you did the previous time, or you might see a totally new perspective that you hadn't considered the first time you attempted at it, or you might realize that it was wrong. And that is the glory of living. That is the glory of learning, is that we can always build on. We can always build on. In the TED Talk by Dr. Laura A. Jana, she talked about, and in the books I've been studying in my educational courses, they say how the brain, the architecture of the brain never stops developing. It never stops. We can go through the most horrible things in life and then go through a period of time where we don't apply any of those things, but with will and determination, we can rebuild the brain again. We can, because the brain never stops growing. The brain never stops learning. And so we need to use this back to our advantage. And basically my whole thesis and my whole conclusion in this is that the way that we can reclaim learning in the age of information is by honoring our nature. So, like I said, being inquisitive, continue to ask questions, continue to analyze, not over critically, don't get into psychoanalysis or schizoanalysis, but at a reasonable amount. I think it was Gandhi that said that you should go through life with healthy inquisitiveness and curiosity. So go through life with that curiosity. Observe everything in the world around you. Ask questions about the things you see. Write it down in your notebook. Ask other people, because communication is important. It's an important part of the learning process. But ask questions and don't be afraid to come up with solutions. Come up with your own solutions, and don't be afraid to be wrong. Don't be afraid to test those hypotheses out. Don't be afraid to go out into the world and immerse yourself in experience. Immerse yourself in everything that this world has to offer, and all your senses and the senses of other beings, so you can really understand that what you're trying to arrive at. There's this really beautiful, beautiful quote from a poetry book. I actually have this poetry book. I got it at the library, which sidetrack, libraries are so epic. I love public libraries. Be your own algorithm. There's this beautiful video by Paige Mount where she talks about being your own algorithm. I recommend it. And libraries are the best way to be your own algorithm, because I found this writer that I didn't even know about, and he's just like magically like the best the best writer I've ever seen. But this is by Rabindranath Tagore. I don't know how to say that, but there's this page that says, "The butterfly counts not months but moments and has time enough." This is exactly what I'm talking about. We have to learn to take our time in the age of information, because everything is so quickly accessed. We need to learn how to land on flower per flower, pour ourselves, immerse ourselves in the scent of every single flower we land on, observe the colors of every single flower we land on, the textures of every single flower we land on. We have to immerse ourselves in every little step of the process, because that is the only way we'll actually learn. That is, and not just actually learn, but actually learn with a sense of joy, with a sense of purpose, with a sense of intention, with a sense of mindfulness. That is the way that we can do these things. is by taking our time to stop at every single flower. So yeah, be curious, be inquisitive, go outside, take your time trying to figure out the questions that you have, and immerse yourself in the world around you, and you'll find joy in learning once again.